Hello and welcome back to VHawks podcast. We're going to talk about the top 10 teams going in, or possibly more, going into the penultimate week, week 18 of the NFL regular season,
You mean the
and who we
ultimate?
think, yeah,
You said penultimate.
sorry. Yeah, it sounds cool. So, but yeah, the ultimate week, or maybe the penultimate week, because then playoffs start. So, I don't know.
The
Um,
final week of the NFL season,
yeah.
there, or the regular season, whatever. I don't know. It was
Exactly. It's hard to figure out what you want to say. Um and yeah, so here's how we see the teams, and most of these will be playoff teams, and we'll talk about what we think is going to happen. All right, so you kept lines at 1. We kept our 1 and 2s the same from last week.
I will say
Did you drop the Bills?
yes.
Interesting. Did you drop the Eagles too?
No,
Or
I
no,
just
the
moved up
Eagles
the
were at 4.
Ravens.
You did what now?
I just moved up the Ravens. The
So the
Ravens and
Ravens were
Bills
5.
swapped.
Okay, Ravens and Bills swapped. Okay, interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that, but more power to you.
Ravens kicked
Um,
the Texans' ass.
yeah, but the Texans have not looked the same, and we also kicked the Texans' ass back in week 3 when they still had healthy receivers. Um,
But it's also the Bills struggled against the Patriots last week, and then they started off slow versus the Jets. It wasn't really until later in that game that they finally actually did stuff. Gave up 48 or 42 to the Lions 3 weeks ago, and then 44 to the Rams. So I just feel like the Ravens are. I see the Ravens in a better light, or how to say this. One's going in the right direction.
yeah,
One's going.
I can
I
see
don't know
that.
about this.
Right. Yeah, my thought process is Ravens are the one step below. They've lost more, obviously, so because the record's worse. But I feel like their weapons are right there, but I feel like their ability to close out the game just is a tiny bit below the Bills and the Eagles, and the Eagles have to be in that conversation because they did last week, and granted it's against the Cowboys with two different quarterbacks, both of which not the starter for the team. Um, and they're dropping 41 still. So, they have to be in there, and the Bills are also can drop a ton of points on you, and it's just a question of the Bills defense, can it keep up with the offense, and the Eagles, can the offense stay consistent? And lately they've been very consistent, except for when Hurts went down, but that's mid game, you're trying to adjust. And even then Pickett didn't do a terrible job.
Let's
um
see. Let's see how Hertz does this week when he comes back. That will decide a lot of things.
yeah, I think that when you put the Eagles at 4, you were like, let's see how everything goes without Hurts, and what happens with him. So yeah, I agree with that. I think the Ravens Bills is a little too much for swap, but it's not totally out of the realm. Like no disrespect to the Ravens whatsoever. They've got everything they need to win.
And it's also there. It's not like I moved one from 8 and one to 2 and the other to 15. Like it's 3 spots.
Yeah. And then the Chiefs, I had to move up just because they won by more than one score again. Um, and they're the 1 seed. They're going to rest starters, so there's no reason to really move them. But compared to the teams above them, there's just there's no flair, I guess is the right word, right?
Here's the bad thing though. At this point, our top fives are teams that we would be excited to see play.
Yes.
Yet the Chiefs are still somehow going to come in. It's going to be an ugly, boring snore fest that the 99% of the game or 99% of the plays do not matter. And then the final play, bullshit happens and the Chiefs win.
Exactly. They just find ways to win. Luck is always on their side. It's
It's not even find ways to win because half these games they haven't done anything to force the win. It's teams finding ways to lose. The
Yep.
Bengals, if you didn't interfere with the guy, you would have won. The Raiders, if you didn't drop the snap, you would have won. Broncos,
If
if
the
you could
Chiefs didn't
actually,
Venmo the refs against the Falcons would have won.
well, that's a whole nother thing. They would still have to score, but whatever. The Broncos, if you could actually block or protect a punt, or not protect a punt, protect a field goal, you would have won. Like half the time, it's just these teams finding ways to lose rather than the Chiefs actually finding ways to win. And that's the stupid thing. It's boring. It's tiring. It's frustrating. And somehow we'll be here in a couple weeks saying the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl for a third straight time. How the hell?
Yeah. It's it's better Steelers football because they win the big games, but it's still like terrible to watch for the most part.
It just helps that they have better stars.
Yeah. Um yeah, I don't want the Chiefs to win. I really don't. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I mean, these are regular season rankings. Chiefs just they've never done anything to really make us go, wow, that's a really great team, other than being 15-1
And then
at
they'll
this
go
point.
blow out the Broncos with their third string because why the hell not?
I mean, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm letting them win. I don't want any part of the Bengals making the playoffs, but that's
Bengals
just
have
me.
to win their game first, so
Yeah, but if the Chiefs play first, then
all right, so right now it's the Ravens game is first, then the Steelers on Saturday. I don't think the Chiefs game's till Sunday.
okay, so yeah, if the Bengals win, I think the Chiefs throw the game. If which might be an NFL first to like actually throw it and not just like, hey, we're gonna play our second string and they're just not gonna be as good. But because I don't think you want the Bengals anywhere in there. And I mean, granted, you don't want to face a division foe either, but you also think, what are the odds the Broncos beat the Bills in Buffalo?
The Bengals probably also have the weakest defense of any of the contenders.
Correct, but that offense can tear you apart. Because
Also,
we
you
just
look
talked
at
about
it,
the reason why I was like kind of okay with you putting the Bills at 5 is because their defense sometimes doesn't catch up to their offense, and that would be the danger the Chiefs probably see of letting the Bengals in because there is a chance the Bengals beat that Bills team and then go play the Chiefs, who the Bengals are one of the only teams in the AFC that have proven they can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs.
though, let's also make sure we're being realistic about this. Since that AFC Championship game, the Bengals are 0-3, if not more, against the Chiefs since that AFC Championship game. And that was a couple years ago. We're starting to get away from that where, oh, the Bengals are the team that can beat them. Well, actually, if you look at it, recently they haven't.
But recently nobody has because they've
That's
won
kind
the
of the
Super
issue, though.
they've won the Super Bowl twice.
And have also been winning in the regular season. And it's not like the Broncos can get in and play some miraculous game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, but the rest of the playoff teams that you're looking at have lost to the Chiefs in the past few years. The Bengals can at least say, "Hey, when we've made the dance, we've proven we can beat them.
So didn't they just get
Like it's
in two
possible."
years ago and lost? Or what was it, year ago or lost or whatever?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah, but being one of two, I mean, 50% success rate versus Lamar's 0% success rate versus, I guess, the Texans, since that was Watson, 0% success rate. The Bills in the playoffs, I think that's also a 0% success rate. I'm just saying, like, the Bengals at least have that one notch on their bedpost where they can say, we've beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs before.
I'm not trying to get on you about it. It's just my only issue with that is at some point you have to stop holding on to that for dear life and say, okay, you got to do it again. You can't keep holding on to that speck of the past, just like a lot of people are holding on to that speck of Joe Burrow was in the Super Bowl. Well, he didn't win it.
Yeah, if this is coming off as like a hope for Bengals fans, that's not the right way. This is more of like if I'm a Chiefs fan and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the potential playoff picture, I'm like, okay, none of these teams have ever beaten us in the playoffs except the Bengals. I don't want the Bengals to get into the playoffs. That's if I'm a Chiefs fan, that's the way I'm looking at it. Just because in previous, if you're going based off of the past like 2 years, you've beaten all these teams. None of these teams have proven a threat to you in the playoffs.
The best
But then
way
if
to
you
look
go,
at it is the Chiefs, you feel good about everybody, but the team you feel a little slight worry about is the Bengals, but you still feel good about everything.
yeah. But so why even take the risk if you can control the Bengals getting in or out of the playoffs? Especially when you still have Buffalo as a buffer. Sorry to use buff twice. Um, in the middle to stop Buffalo or to stop the Broncos.
I just I see where you're going with that. It's just I also feel like the Chiefs don't care.
I mean, yeah, the true. I'm just I still again the Chiefs are probably going to three-peat like you say. But with that being the case, also, they've got a lot riding on this. They really want that three-peat. That'd be a first in NFL history. They'd want zero chance to be beaten in the playoffs. And because the Bengals have had any amount of success in previous years against them, I think they'd rather not see them in the playoffs. But again,
If
that's
the
just
Chiefs put
if
in
you're a
their
Chiefs fan.
starters, then they're not throwing. If they put in their second string to start at the game, then the Broncos will probably win, but we'll get to that in our predictions.
Yeah. And all right, Commanders are after as well. Buccaneers I moved up as well. I dropped the Rams down to honorable mentions just because they haven't been putting up the points they have in previous weeks. The last 2 weeks they have not put up much.
But it's also the
Um,
division games both weeks.
yeah, and granted, tough tough defense still, but the games before that they were just getting back to really dominant wins, and I felt that was enough to drop them. Again, it was also the Commanders and Buccaneers just being a lot better in the past weeks. Buccaneers have kind of been slept on my rankings because they haven't been on here, so had to move them up with their recent victories. Packers had to drop from I think they were 6 to 9 on mine, and then the Chargers needed to be on here as well for clinching. So and Steelers had to fall off because they lost and
Oh, Steelers have
um
looked horrible these past 2 weeks, and they have the potential to go 0-4 in their last 4 games this season, and that's a horrible way to go in the playoffs.
yeah.
As you see, I completely dropped them off. They've fallen off the face of the earth, and there has been issues in the locker room of there is one player on defense who's playing too much hero ball. It's 10 men on the field and somebody just doing whatever the hell they want. Um, Whole bunch of internal issues right now where these are things that you get ironed out week 2 and 3, not week 18. Um, the offense has struggled. George Pickens being out for a couple games and then finally coming back has kind of jostled a few things around, but at this point of the season, you can't be making the mistakes they have. A lot of these touchdowns they're giving up is uncontested, easy. They couldn't protect or they couldn't defend Kelsey, which not a lot of people can, but you could at least have somebody defending him. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I complete loss of faith in the Steelers. So
I I'm trying to see here for a second. Okay, so you have Rams and 8. I was gonna say like you drop Packers off for whatever reason. That's something else I don't think I agree with, but I could probably see your reasoning in the fact that earlier I brought up they haven't beaten any good teams. Um, like you can say they beat teams with winning records, which I think people do say because the three teams they beat are y'all, the Rams, and who else they beat with their winning record? There's nobody else in the West has a winning record right now. We played the West. They played the Dolphins. They don't have a winning record right now. Hold on, I'll go through this. You say something else.
Because right now they're 2-6 against playoff teams.
They're three. Yeah, they're 3-6 because they beat the Texans. There you go.
Wait, hold on.
Or sorry, not they've beaten three teams with winning records.
Though if you look at playoffs, they're 2-6.
Yeah,
And that's not great if you want to be a top 10 team.
correct. And when one of those wins is against the Rams' second string.
And we also don't have much respect in the Texans this year because they have not been great at all.
Correct.
Um, I see what I see where you can see it as a bit of disrespect for completely dropping them off, but honestly, that game was not that close until the fourth quarter.
Well, last 6 minutes, but yeah.
Well, yeah. Um,
But no, I get you. And see this could also be me not remembering where they were on your list. They were probably like 8 or 9 on your list,
they
I'm
were
guessing.
in the bottom five, if not 8 to 10.
Okay. See, I think I was going into it thinking they were around 6, like they were for me, and that would be like such a huge drop because that would mean they're at least 12. Going from 6 to 12 would be like, dang, that's insane. I mean, the Vikings are a good team. You don't have to drop them 6 spots for that.
Though it's also at
Um,
some point they've got to be a playoff team. If they like when I think top 10, I'm thinking you can go in the playoffs and make some noise. That
yeah,
isn't against the Dallas Cowboys.
right,
Right now, if I were to put the Packers up against, let's say at least the top eight, Buccaneers, Chargers, you could make the argument. Bengals, you could make the argument. Not really. But top eight, do I feel like the Packers could beat them right now? I cannot say in good faith that I would favor them against my top eight.
right. Yeah, I mean, against your top 8, the Rams, I give a chance to. Division games, obviously, you'd give a chance, but if we're
So I
looking
mean
at,
like favored. Like I'm Vegas
yeah,
and
if
I'm
you're
saying
favored, yeah.
I would favor the
Um,
Packers compared to this other team. Right
I
now,
mean,
I
because
can't
they're on
take
the
it.
road, it's going to be tougher. But if they were to play the Rams or the Commanders at a neutral site, I think there's a chance the Packers are favored. But other than that, there's no shot. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like there's not much of a based off of the eyeball test right now. There's not much of a scenario where you're like the Packers should go in and win this game.
Like there's no resume. They've been up and down all year. Yes, they've had some good wins. They've had dominant wins against bad teams. But we've seen the Cowboys do that, get in the playoffs and get smacked immediately.
Right.
Like, yes, you need to beat the teams that you should beat, but at some point, if you want to be seen as a contender, you got to beat the teams that may have a talent advantage against you because you're always going to have some talent discrepancy somewhere.
Right.
And you need to overcome that, and they have not this year.
They took the curse from the Cowboys. Within 2022, the Vikings had that curse. We beat a lot of teams, but then we got crushed by the good teams, including the Cowboys. And then 2023, we didn't have that curse. We just died on the roster. And the Cowboys became the team that couldn't beat good teams and then got smacked in the playoffs. Now the Packers can't beat good teams, and I hope they get smacked in the playoffs. That'd be funny if it's a cycle of just who gets the thing. That's interesting. We'll have to see if that happens.
You're welcome for me enlightening you.
Well, I just think it's kind of fun. Well, it all goes back to the Vikings 2022 season. I just don't know how the Giants didn't win in 2023, so it just directly switched to the Cowboys as soon as the Giants and Cowboys played last year, is my only guess.
They played in week 1, I believe.
Yeah, so the Cowboys just played the Giants and were like, "Hey, you're not even going to get to go through the winning season, beating good teams or beating bad teams. We're just going to take it from you."
And wasn't that
So
the 40-0 game?
probably, honestly, yeah. So that makes sense. The Giants took all the pain up front and didn't have to pay it out. They just paid up front. So hey, kudos to the Giants.
And then for honorable mentions, only reason why I have the Bengals there is I have no trust in their defense. But that
Sorry, it's just
offense,
funny. The reason why I have them on this list is because I have no trust in
well, no, dude,
it
if I
was the
could
way
trust their
the timing was
defense,
great.
I would have an argument for putting them above the Chargers just because their offense. I can't trust their defense, so they're an honorable mention, but that offense is holy hell.
Yeah.
I see where you're going earlier with you don't want, or the Chiefs don't want to see this team because if Joe Burrow gets the ball last, good luck, have fun.
Mhm.
They're boat racing down the field. Um, if only they don't score with a minute 13 left, and then their defense gives Patrick Mahomes a chance to get down the field. Whole nother thing. But like again, I've said this repeatedly on the podcast the past few weeks. If the Bengals record was near 13, 14, maybe even 12 wins, Joe Burrow's probably looking at MVP consideration, and Jamar Chase is looking at heavy favorites for Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Because I think Jamar Chase is going for the Triple Crown right now, which for obtaining that with that type of record should be a shame to the whole Bengals organization.
Yeah. That's true. I think when I got done with my 10 and I was doing honorable mentions, I was like, I can't have a non-playoff team on the list. Like the Rams and Steelers have both clinched, so they're gonna see playoff action regardless. So
The
I'm
Buccaneers
like,
haven't clinched.
they need to be in there. Yeah, but the Buccaneers have been dominant, and in my eyes, they're favored to clinch because all they need to do is win, and they're playing a UFL Saints team. So if they can't beat the Saints team, then they will not even see the honorable mentions on this list, and or that will be because they're not in the playoffs,
That would be
assuming
an
the
instant
team beat.
course
Yeah.
correct.
But honestly, like I see them as more of a threat. Like if I'm looking at it, granted you don't want to play the same team twice, but if we have to beat the 5 seed, I'd rather play the Falcons than the Buccaneers. I think is the way that I look at it. Just because Baker Mayfield can easily put up a ton of points on you. Personally, I think the Falcons have the roster to do it, but I don't think Penix is
He's
there
not
at
there
that.
yet.
Yeah. So, and I think you agree with me on that. Like you'd rather face the Falcons than the Bucks. Um,
Well,
but
definitely,
yeah,
especially with the quarterback conversation, I'd rather face Penix than Baker.
yeah. So
But what we'll probably do next week, we haven't actually talked about this yet, but just going to say this now. We're probably going to do top 14 with just the playoff teams.
yeah,
And then maybe at the end of the season, after the Super Bowl, we'll do a top 32.
that'd be kind of fun. Yeah.
Or we'll just
But
do a
yeah,
top
for
10,
sure, for
bottom
sure,
10.
next week we need to have a top 14. We need to rank each playoff team. Maybe we could even do separate conferences, but I like the idea of an all 14. Um,
We'll do all 14 and then we'll decide whether we'll do a 32 or just top 10, bottom 10.
right. But yeah, that'll do it for the rankings. Week 18 will decide whose list is correct at the 1 or 2 spot, and I'm hoping that it's mine because that means the GQ bus will have provided us the bye week and have beaten the Motor City Kitties
Good
and
Lord.
prove the redhead redemption to be true. That is all.
No, no
Skull.
comment. Peace.